Today, I'm going to present my PowerPoint on human ecological theory, and this is one of my favorite ones because I understood this one the most, and I've actually studied this one the most out of all the theories. And I'm going to start with the history of human ecological theory. We've got Ernest Haeckel, who was a German zoologist and an early evolutionist who, by the way, devised 12 new sciences. How amazing is that? And he was the one who said it would be essential that somebody needed to study organisms in their own environment, which has gone a long way since then. In fact, that made Ellen Swallow Richards the one who wanted to take on that challenge, and she created that science, which would be called ecology, spelled like the word underneath her name. She had many accomplishments in her life that I got the pleasure to read about. Like she studied water quality, waste disposal, food nutrition, and just so much more. This woman did so much. And she wanted ecology to improve people's lives within their environment and she wanted to focus most of her educational efforts on women, since this was around the time that women didn't have equal rights or were even allowed to get an education. She's also credited for the founder of the human ecology and home economics, which is interesting. And in 1916, Robert Woolcock and C.V. Shreve founded Ecological Society of America, which has done a lot for us. And then in the early 1920s, Robert R. Park and Ernest W. Burgess embraced human ecology in the field of sociology. So here it is this is getting pushed to other parts of education and studies. So it's great. It's not just staying, it's like more people are studying this because of just one man saying it was important and then one woman going forth with that and doing something about it. And then we've got Beatrice Paolucci. He was involved in the existence of ecological perspective in the study of families and itemized a variety of concepts that were later found foundational in applications of ecological theory and in family studies. He also later developed an ecological model for family decision making. Interesting. All right, and then Yuri Brunfenberner. I am almost familiar with him 100%, but not 100. But he is definitely the one I studied the most through my few semesters, and he is the one who decided there was going to be a study that focused on children, from concentrating on their genetics and biological capabilities to how they were affected and influenced by things in their home or their school or their neighborhood environment. Just so that we could better understand an individual. He made the system, the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, the macrosystem, and the chronosystem. And I'll explain all of those in the next slide. So, what is human ecological theory? Human ecological theory concentrates on the interaction and interdependence of humans as biological and social entities within their environment. So, it explains how the inherent qualities of a child and his environment interact to influence how he will grow and develop. It consists of 5 different systems that are to do with the child's life, starting with the microsystem, which encompasses the most immediate environment in the child's life. Things like the things or people actually that child would deal with on a daily basis, such as parents or school, neighborhood, or even religious like churches and centers. And then there's the mesosystem, which is the interactions or links between 2 or more things in the microsystem. So a good way to understand most of these is by examples. So an example of this would be like a parent and a teacher interacting about a child's schoolwork. And then that child would eventually, be affected either positively or negatively, depending on what that conversation was about. And then the third system is the ecosystem, which can involve two or more settings that the child doesn't directly occur in, but is still affected by indirectly. And an example of that is when, say, a child's parent has had a bad day at work and then goes home to neglect or mistreat the child. So that child, even though doesn't go to the parent's work, has never been to the parent's work, the child still gets affected indirectly by it. And the fourth system is the microsystem, which consists of a person's beliefs, values, attitudes, culture, and ideologies. An example of this is if a child who grows up in like a third world country where they don't even have clean water, like something as essential as clean water or technology, they will experience a different kind of life and development than children who have had these things growing up, like water and technology, and simply a house over their head, and clothes to have on their bodies. And then lastly is the fifth system, the chronosystem, which is the environmental effects and transitions that occur throughout a child's lifetime. This consists of all the experiences that a person has had or in his or her lifetime, including environmental events and major life transition and historical events like presidents or like anything like that, like any big thing that's happened. Okay, and then this is a little picture that just shows you all the systems. And then we've got basic assumptions. So the first one is human beings and groups are a product of both genetic and environment. So this is talking about the importance of nature versus nurture. The environment the child lives in can either hinder or help the child's future. Naturally you can be intelligent, but if you lack resources, such as money or good people in your life to influence you, then you won't be able to have a life so good as someone who did have those resources. Okay. And then next is, as social beings, humans are dependent on others. This is how we first begin to begin to learn the language we speak now. It's through human interaction that we learn how to say words and the meaning of words. So, for example, if you're born down in the South and you listen to everyone who speaks around you, you're going to pick up that Southern accent that someone else who isn't around those people wouldn't. This is also the inherent way that we love and care for other humans, such as, helping a stranger that you see needs help, or at least hoping that they get the help that they need. It's like the compassion we have. Next is human beings are finite, such that time is both a limitation and a resource. So time constraints and enables the evolution of population and helps us better understand individuals' behaviors and social arrangements. So like seeing things on a timeline would show us the changes of people and other things over time. Like looking at it like that is easier to understand that. And then we got humans organize their interactions with their spatial environment. So this is like the physical and biological laws of nature and human-derived rules, such as like social norms and stuff like that, that would guide family interactions. So whatever's going on in the world, I guess, or whatever you think's okay, and your family will then have an impact on or from that, and then act a certain way. And then I've got human behavior can be comprehended on at least two levels: individual and population. So this is like if on the individual level, this focuses on the extent to which individuals adapt or fail to adapt to their environment. And if they fail at this point in their life, then it would ultimately result in death of the individual or just failing at whatever the situation at the time may be. And then there's the population level. This one basically pays attention to the different characteristics that are shown in individual groups they're mainly things that clean that like a clean gene pool and the ability to survive and prosper with only the environmental resources that are available to them. This is said to represent natural selection. When I think about this, I think about the people who are a lot less smart during this day and age. So, like when you see a video online of someone doing really dangerous things and then seeing them hurt themselves or ultimately die, it proves the factor of natural selection a little bit. Because a smart person, wouldn't necessarily risk their lives like that, and in return, they wouldn't have kids that would do that thing. They would have kids who are smart and last. And then there was a last one that did not make it to the slide, but it's very self-explanatory. It's that humans are dependent upon their environment to meet their biological needs. So it's like, we depend on the environment for like water and food, air, things like that, because we know that we need our environment to help us to survive. Right? And next, I'm going to do the primary terms and concepts. So we got the human ecosystem. This is an organism that operates as a unit to interact with its environment, like a family ecosystem, which is a type of human ecosystem. And then we got niche, which are niche, I'm sorry, that is functions within a system, or a human ecosystem really, that shows only those who can adapt will be able to be a part of it or in it. So like if you can't make it in this group, then you won't make it. You won't be a part of the niche. Then we've got the environment. When I was reading this book, they took this definition straight from someone else because there really wasn't a better way to describe it. So I just did the same thing. I just took it straight from the book because it was honestly the best definition to help for anybody to understand what this means. So it consists of the totality of the physical, biological, social, economic, political, aesthetic, and structural surroundings for human beings and the context for their behavior and development. And then we've got ontogenetic development, which is the internal and genetic development that is linked to environmental factors that either help or harm the developmental capabilities. And then we've got adaptation. So this is how families, individuals, or other human organisms reconstruct whatever they have in order to better adapt to the surroundings, mainly for survival. We've all had to do this. And then there's needs. So these are just things that are essential for our survival, like being loved and being loved in return, being valued, and then like knowing information. Like we all have to know something. We can't just sit there like a knot on a log. You have to know something about something to feel like you are valid. And then we've got values. So values are a person's like principles or standards of what they think is acceptable or not acceptable behavior. I've met a few people with very horrible values. And then there's management. This is the processes around the resources that attain human goals. So like parents manage their children so that they can control what goes on in their life. They don't want anything bad coming in. They're going to manage that. And then there's decision making. This helps a family function well because it sets these ideas down, and then the family can think together and make that idea either like a new rule or just a statement. Like it's normally for good things and sometimes bad. And then there's human development. So this is like when a person matures and learns about very different and broad things that their environment are within their environment and how it affects them over time. We all have a different, we have human development. And then there's quality of human life and quality of environment. So this is this is the thought that having good resources like money and clothes or other needs like that would be the best quality. But then there are some people who think that the quality of being are living a simple life and just having, food, water, clothes, like just enough, and like living on the side of a mountain, like that's all fine for them. So we all have different ideas on what the quality of life and environment is for each of us. And then I've got the application of this theory. So you can apply this theory when you're thinking about why a person acts the way that they do. So using this assumption that humans and groups are a product of both genetic and environment, you can see how a person who would lack resources growing up might not be as successful as someone who has had many resources. These resources can be things like money or clean water. Again, someone who lives in a country that has clean water would be better off than someone who was living in a country who didn't have clean water, and especially because if you didn't have something like clean water, then you probably are also suffering in other ways than just that. Okay, and then I've got some strengths of the theory and some weaknesses. So some strengths are this forced scientists to look more in depth of a child's actions. So this helped us better understand children, which is something we need because we were children once. So it's like understanding who we used to be can help us understand how what can come for our future lives. And then we've got it helps us see the differences in each child and how to better accommodate them. So this is each child is unique, right? And given their life events, and this theory helps us know and understand that, as well as to accommodate to a child's learning or social capabilities. And then we've got some weaknesses. So a weakness that a lot of people have said is that this theory is hard to understand. And then, which wasn't too hard for me, but I can see how it could be. And then there's the weakness that you're unsure about which system of the theory is more important and more important to pay attention to. Like, which system? Should I be more focused on this child's home life, or should it be more focused on the interactions between, is it really the home, or is it the interaction between the parent and the teacher? What is it? You're not really sure. You're just kind of looking at all of them. And then the last one is this day and age, problems might not work with this theory. So there are new and different factors that would contribute to a child's outcome that wasn't really a problem in the past, when this theory was developed. Things like the growth of social media, for example. That's a really complex problem that seems to always come up. Right, and then we've got the comparison. So I chose human ecological theory and family development theory. Family development theory focuses on systematic and pattern changes experienced by families as they move through their life course. And that sounds a lot like the chrono system in the human ecological theory. It also says that families must be viewed on multiple levels of analysis, which is something that human ecological theory does as well in every concept. So if you can understand family development theory, you've got a little understanding. You can understand human ecological theory. They're not too different. They've got a lot of the same concepts or ideas, really, that you have to pay attention to what happens in a person's life to see what they will eventually end up in. Okay, and that's the end. Thanks, guys.